Hey gang, Professor Feeser here, and today we're going to talk about an important topic as it relates to Python, which is typing. The Python typing system is a bit hidden. Python does that on purpose because they want engineers, they want folks who haven't coded before to get up and running in a hurry. They want them to be able to do work quickly with Python, which is great. But I think the sooner you get exposed to types and data types and understand how to explore what a type is and what its components are, the more quickly you'll start to understand objects and classes, which is going to be critical to your growth as a Python developer. This is a video in a series on Python, so if you ever feel yourself getting lost, go back and watch a previous video. We'll be here when you wrap up. All you need is a GitHub repository and the ability to execute code in that repository to follow along. Create a Codespace, hit the green button in your root, either have a Codespace and you can launch it, or you can create a new one. We're not actually going to be using or committing files in this example. We're just going to be using the terminal. So over on the right, you want to select terminal, and then all you need to type is Python and hit enter. Python and hit enter. That's going to show you 3 arrows, which is an indication you're in the Python terminal right now. This is a highly responsive environment for playing around and developing. For example, if I said x is equal to hello, and then just hit x, it'll say, oh, x is hello. I didn't have to print x, which I'd normally have to do in a real Python script in order to see what x was. This makes it, like I said, wonderful for developing or exploring concepts like we're about to do, types. In Python, there are this concept of functions. And there are these global functions that are available anytime. They're part of the standard library. Print would be an example of one, where that just pushes something to standard out. We learned about open. If you've been following along, we've learned about the open function. There's another one called type. So if I, let's say, create a variable. I created x, that's a string. But if I wanted to prove it was a string, I can use the type function against x. And it says, yeah, that's a string. I could also use the type function against what am I? It's in double quotes, so it says it's a string. I could run type against single quotes, what am I? And it says, well, you're a string as well. Single quotes, double quotes, variable that was created from single or double quotes. You're a string in all cases. Notice it says class string. And the proper way to talk here would be x is an object. It is a string object. That's the type. Created from the string class. When you say string object, that's the class it came from. If I wanted to peer in, like what does that mean? What's the DNA of a string object actually look like? You can use the dir function for that. So if I dir x, it goes, here's all the names, here's the building blocks, here's the DNA of a string function. And what's interesting, I can run, let's say I create y is equal to other string. I could run dir on y and it shows me the same thing. I could run dir on what about this and it'll show me the same thing. All strings have the same DNA, same building blocks. What you're seeing is what makes a string a string. It's a collection of names, behaviors, and functions. You're saying, oh, like dir is a function, that's right. Like print is a function, that's right. Like type is a function, yep. Like open was a function, yep. All of those are functions. When we look at these, some of these are functions. The thing is, when there are functions defined inside of a class, which is what we're seeing, the building blocks or the definitions in the class, it's called a method. And at first that sounds confusing, but it's really not. Remember, X is an string object, we said. Well, all that means is, I can't say is digit on its own. If I type is digit, it's going to go, what are you talking about? That's not defined. But what I could say is x dot is digit. That's saying actually you read it left to right, go into x, which is a string, peer into x, x should carry code called is digit. That's called a method. It's just a function that lives inside of x. It goes, no, x, which is hello, is not a digit. I'll run dir again on x so we can see everything that it is. There's also an is alpha. So x dot is alpha. Yeah, it's true. It is just keyboard, ABC materials, not 1, 2, 3s. Similarly, I could use x dot capitalize. I could use x dot upper. What you're seeing printed to the screen is what's returned. So x dot capitalize returns a string. X dot upper returns a string. Already you can start to appreciate typing. If I know that is alpha always returns a Boolean, which is what true is. Notice it doesn't have quotes around it. If I know capitalize always returns a string. If I know upper always returns a string. I can write better code, more complete code. Maybe what I want, maybe my string is actually x is equal to HTTP, or let's do space HTTP example.com. And my goal here is to normalize that. So I pulled some data off of some text file and I have to normalize it so we can actually look that up. Well, maybe the first thing is x dot lower, which would make it all lowercase. But here I'm saying, okay, lower returns a string. So maybe x dot strip gets rid of all the white space on the sides, but doesn't get rid of the lowered com. I could put them together. I could say x dot lower followed by strip. Like a daisy chain. You still read, evaluate left to right. What is x? It's a string. String carries lower. That returns a string. That return string carries strip. So what we get is a normalized string that maybe now is appropriate for logging or passing to a function that's going to make an HTTP request for us. Let's look at another one. We could say my num is equal to 5. The type of my num is an integer. I could say my float is equal to 3.14 and say what's the type of my float. We can take the dir of either of those, my num or my float, but the names in there aren't too helpful, especially when you're starting out. What is interesting is x, remember, is a string. X plus my num is going to cause an error. It's apples and oranges. It says, sorry, I cannot do that. What you need to do is convert one of them. And off the top of my head, I think it only makes sense to convert the number to a string. So we could do x plus the str. I want to change what I'm passing to the str function to a string. And that would be my num. That works. http://example.com 5 at the end. If you're going, wait a second, I thought we modified that data before, x.lower.strip. Didn't we get rid of the space on the side? Didn't we lowercase it? That's not permanent. If you wanted to make it permanent, you create a new variable. So like set that to z. Z is equal to that equation, and then you could call z. Or this is kind of tricky. You could say x is equal to x.lower.strip. So you're reassigning x, where now x is affected by what was returned. Gang, this is just an introduction to typing. We could talk about this all day. But get in the habit of exploring type, exploring dir functions, and peering inside of objects. This is the terminal is a wonderful place to do this. One last one I could leave you with is let's create an open file object. Let's say with open my example.txt in write mode as my file, colon. You still have to do the spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to say, what's the type of my file? And also, show me the dir of my file. It says, well, my file is a io.TextIOWrapper. It's from the io.TextIOWrapper class. And then dir my file, here's all the names inside of it. So if you followed along in the previous lessons about reading and writing to a file, we explored .read. Notice now you can see readable, read line, read lines. Write we explored, but there's a lot of other ones in here, and that's what I mean by if you want to start to explore what's possible with Python, type and dir are very, very helpful. When you're up against, I'm not sure what this object is, I'm not sure what this variable is, I'm not sure how to interact with it, run a type on it, run a dir on it, and like I said, you'll start to engage in the Python push-ups that are necessary to ultimately understand more about object-oriented programming in classes. Wow, so it turns out typing isn't that difficult to understand, and it really isn't restrictive. It really is something that's going to make our code more functional and more reliable. Gang, I hope you learned something in this video. If you did, go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe. I'll see you on the next episode of Code with Feeser.